Thank you to AIOS Scientific Committee and Dr. Somshila for giving me an opportunity to speak in this very august gathering. So the topic given to me was not to fear, immunomodulators are here. So I was wondering, as I was going through all these slides, I've seen wonderful cases which were being shown, nice demonstration of patients who were not improving, who improved very well with the specific forms of treatment and investigations for that. But I was wondering, what do I do when I'm going to speak about immunomodulators? Because the eventual outcome would be the same. It's just like you have diagnosed, the difficult part in uveitis would be the diagnosis. Once you come to the diagnosis, then you have to give either steroids or some other modality of treatment, and then the eventual outcome is almost the same. So how do I go about it? So when I was, before I start my presentation, I would like to say I have no financial interest. And another disclaimer is that the and the other disclaimer is that subsequent slides will show the interventions in all non-infectious forms of uveitis, either intermediate posterior panuveitis, select case of anti-uveitis, or scleritis. So the absence of infection is the first thing which everyone has to know before we start immunomodulatory therapy. Now, having said that, the first step of treatment of uveitis would be infection, as I'd already said, and then we would start treating the inflammation. So we use either steroids, immunomodulator therapy if that doesn't work, or in certain other situations which I would be saying. And the third step would then be biologics, which we are having right now. So what's wrong with the systemic steroids? There's nothing wrong in the short term, and it is always and will always be the first line of therapy, as Dr. Shantanu just said. But the problem is in the medium and the long-term use, there's a lot of adverse effects related to this, especially when the dosage exceeds 7.5 milligram per day of a maintenance dose. So a cross-section study or a survey which was done in the US showed that there's very limited use of immunomodulatory therapy despite there being guidelines. And the patients eventually turn out to have corticosteroids in chronic uveitis more than 10 milligram per day, and then end up with a lot of complications as far as the systemic disease is concerned. Systemically, they are concerned. So they have a lot of other side effects. And as Dr. Rathinam also said, we look at the patient as a whole. And so keeping them on long-term steroid therapy may be more harmful to the patient than probably starting off immunomodulatory therapy. So immunomodulatory therapy is not commonly used, probably because it's a form of immunosuppressive therapy. And when you say immunosuppressive, it's either because of we use either antimetabolites, as we all know, or cyclosporin, or we use alkylating agents such as cyclophosphamide or chlorambucil. Out of this, the antimetabolites are reasonably, the side effect profile is reasonably tolerable, whereas the side effect profile of alkylating agents are much more severe. So the immune suppression is much more with the alkylating agents, whereas antimetabolites are a little bit less, but definitely they will complement or maybe substitute oral steroids in certain cases. But the fear is that there is an increased risk also of using alkylating agents as well as antimetabolites, though alkylating agents are much higher. And this fear is leading to the decreased use of immunosuppression and the probably the misuse or the overuse of steroids. So to put an end to this, we have to first face the fears. And so we will, I'll try to describe why the immunomodulators are feared. The mortality, there's a chance of cancer developing with the use of immunomodulatory therapy. Systemic therapy, the ophthalmologists are more used for systemic therapy or ocular therapy, whereas here we have to deal with the systemic drug, which we are not very commonly used to. There are the side effects which we are worried about, and the cost. So as far as the mortality and the cancer is concerned, there have been multicentric studies which have concluded that the commonly used immunosuppressive drugs do not overall increase the cancer mortality. However, this is not true for all the types of immunomodulators, but most of the ones which are commonly used, they do not cause any increase in mortality or cancer. So we need not worry too much about this as long as we are monitoring the patient. The second problem with the risk of immunomodulator is the use of systemic therapy. So we use systemic drugs. We don't have to deal with the injection or a surgery, which we ophthalmologists are more commonly familiar with. We have to give a systemic therapy, and that's what we are worried about. But the MUSH trial again said that up to 7 years, immunosuppression and of course with supplementation of oral steroids are much better than local therapy of steroids, wherein they use fluocinolone implant as a comparator agent here. The side effects, of course, are there. As I was saying earlier, it's not without side effects. In fact, alkylating agents can cause the slight increase in the lifetime risk of cancer, but can also, on the other hand, induce drug-free remissions which are longer, and the patient can be off treatment for a long time. As far as the cost are concerned, the commonly used ones which include methotrexate are as cheap as less than 200 rupees per month cost to the patient. Whereas certain ones like mycophenolate mofetil may be a bit more expensive. Cyclophosphamide is again cheaper, but chlorambucil may be slightly more expensive. Compared to the biologic agents, they are definitely cheaper alternative which we are having. Now that the fears have been tackled and we decide we have to take, we agree to start on immunomodulators, then there are certain questions which come into the mind. When do I start the immunomodulatory therapy? Which immunomodulatory therapy do I start? What should I monitor for once I start this therapy, and when do I stop this therapy? So the indication for starting the therapy would be whenever there is a recurrence on steroids, whenever they are tapered to less than 7.5 milligram per day, or steroids are not enough. There is no control despite the amount of steroids being used in more than 30 milligram per day, or they are not tolerated, such as the ischemic necrosis of the head of the femur. And there are certain conditions where the chronicity of the disease itself would warrant us to start on immunomodulatory therapy in the beginning itself, such as VKH, and the severity of the disease, such as polyarthritis nodosa, wherein we would want a much higher level of immunosuppression than can be offered by steroids alone. Especially, we have to be more careful in sight-threatening or one-eyed patients. So one of my examples is one of the patients had come with a very classical anterior uveitis, which was diagnosed to be HLA-B27 clinically as well as by investigations, and she had a low backache. Whereas on the other hand, I had one more patient who had a esotropia, who had poor vision in that eye from childhood, and she was having vitiligo, diagnosed to have VKH syndrome. In view of these two conditions of one-eyed and having VKH syndrome, my choice would be for this patient. However, the next would be which immunotherapy do I use? So I would probably consider certain problems such as conception, cell counts, cancer, and counseling before I actually start the immunosuppressive therapy. And in my patient, the first patient, of course, I didn't start it. The rheumatologist started the therapy, whereas the second patient was started on azathioprine. Both of them did very well with that. What should I monitor for? The monitoring of the immunosuppressive therapy mainly are there with side effects. Antimetabolites cause hepatitis, whereas cyclosporin more commonly having nephrotoxicity. Alkylating agents cause cytopenia. My patient stopped, had no side effects, but stopped on our own, and then they had a recurrence. But my second patient had drug-induced hepatitis and needed to be changed to another agent. I'll just take one more minute and I'll close. And I decide when to stop the immunotherapy would be 2 years or 1 year after the starting the therapy. So in view of the shortage of time, I will brush through my slides. Both my patients were doing well after 3 years of therapy, after which I stopped. One of the cases which I had was a traumatic scleritis, which was no infective agent was found, and once it was not responding to any other therapy, and finally resolved only with the addition of methotrexate. So sometimes, even if it is infective or we are suspecting infection, once it's over, once we are sure that it's not, then we can probably start immunosuppressive therapy for that. Immunosuppressive therapy has not been agreed upon during this COVID pandemic, but if a patient is on immunosuppressive therapy, then that can be continued for depending on the systemic conditions. So finally, my take-home message would be: we should not fear change. We should probably have you should be starting immunosuppressive therapy rather than subjecting the patient to the complications of prolonged steroid use. We have the focus initiative for that, and my big advice would be to definitely collaborate with a rheumatologist or a physician to start the systemic therapy because they are much more aware of the side effects and the problems dealing with this. Thank you very much.